Hello? Okay, we're going to use the microphone because I understand this session, like many others during the Congress, it's live, and there probably are people out there in Cyberland who may be listening in and may be contributing. But welcome to you folk out there, but importantly, welcome to those here in the room. For those out there, we've got, at the moment, we have 4 people in 2 groups. So we have a group of 4 on this side of the room, and we have a group of 4 over here. So 8 people all together, and they're all waving to you right now. That's great, and we're ready to go. My name is Paul, and this is Mohammed, and we are your facilitators for the session this afternoon. We have a rapporteur here who's going to be busily taking notes and making whatever she needs to do, and we have a couple of young scouts here from Scouts of Hong Kong who will be managing the online contribution and picking up anything that you out there might want to contribute with or maybe have a question. Well, this session, it's probably one of the more interesting ones in respect that it's one of the last sessions of the Congress, and it's at the end of the 3 days, and most people have said, oh, I'm just about sessioned out. And so concentration and involvement, we're going to try and keep that moving. But as you'd realise with a topic like this, and the topic in question that we're referring to today is called Estimating the Priceless. And what we want to look at are the benefits of volunteering. Now, there's been some talk about volunteering in this Congress already. There's been a lot of information. There have been 2 previous sessions to this. Different focus to this session as was intended, but now what we're looking at under the impacts of education on scouting for this theme day, we're going to look at the benefits of volunteering in a way which will hopefully challenge us back in our own NSOs or NSOs for the future. So you can see the 2 of us named at the bottom. Are you ready to travel on this volunteering journey with us today? Yeah, oh, wow. That's, Mohammed, that's the best woo-ha we've had. So fantastic. So thank you. That we look forward to it. All right. With any session like this, we've got some objectives. Now, I'm going to move just over here, and I've got to be careful. You know the rule here, don't you? We've got this lovely little position mark with tape on the floor where the camera picks up, and we have to stay within that particular area. And you'll notice, as you probably picked up in other rooms, there's a lovely green cross on the floor. Now that cross is important too, because during the session there'll be times when you'll need to report, and so whoever the lucky people are, they'll need to come out here and stand near this green spot. So you're under the light, you're on camera, and people out there using the microphone can hear and see what you are saying. So you're going to be stars. How about that? Fantastic. All right, let's keep moving. Objectives for the session. We're going to hopefully expand your understanding of some of the principles behind volunteering. We all have a good idea what it is, but sometimes we forget that for us who volunteer, and we're all volunteers, is that there are certain benefits we often miss out on. And people ask me, why am I a volunteer? And I have to think for a moment, because it's just been something I've been doing for years. I've never had to sort of question why I do it. It's just something I do. And it's probably the same for you. So for the session, we want to look at a number of facets of volunteering, particularly those related to the reasons why people do and the benefits of being a volunteer. Second one relates to being able to describe some volunteer trends that are currently aware in terms of what we understand, the trend in various countries around the world. I'm going to use the case study in Australia because that one I could get figures fairly easily. Some other countries it's a little bit more difficult, but it will give you an idea. So we want to look at those motives and what the responses are, particularly for younger age groups. There seems to be a trend today for younger people to more willingly volunteer than younger people did some years back. And that's an interesting phenomenon. one has to ask the question, why? So let's explore that. The third one is relating why scouting to harness this intention of young people to volunteer in various capacities, whether that's in an organisation outside scouting or not. We would like them to be volunteers in scouting, and we want to think about that. And the last one is we want to describe a number of ways that will help enhance volunteering in scouting. Your NSO, like mine, if anyone says to me, oh, we have no trouble getting volunteers, I think someone's telling me a little bit of a story that's not quite true, because most NSO have difficulty getting adults to be committed to do leadership responsibility. Not always, but in many cases that's the problem. And so what we want to then think about before we start is what are some of the definitions of volunteering so that we've got a good idea. So we will just flick through some of these because the real work is what you are going to contribute very shortly. So I'm going to run through a few slides, and Mohammed is going to take you through a bit more and get you working. Okay? All right, how are we travelling so far? You don't need water, don't need more refreshment. No, you're comfortable, padded seats. Geez, you're lucky. I'm not sure of the people out there, but I'm sure you're comfortable listening and watching. So what's the definition of volunteering? Well, here's one. Volunteering is an activity undertaken out of free will, where the motivation is not monetary gain, in other words, you don't get paid for it, and the action is of benefit to others. That's from the International Symposium on Volunteering. Notice there are three distinct parts of that definition. The first part is to do with free will. The second one says that you don't get paid for it. And the third part says that you are doing it for the benefit of others. So now, folks, we have two groups of 5 in the room, and it's glad that you could join us. So, welcome. That's okay? That's okay. All right. Now, another definition, this comes from the National Council of Social Service in Singapore, and their definition simply says a volunteer is someone who gives time, talents, and professional expertise on a voluntary basis without any remuneration, without any money. Similar thinking to this one. And the last one comes from Volunteering Australia. And it's very similar in focus. It's volunteering as an activity undertaken in a community context without pay and of the volunteer's free will for the benefit of the community. Can you see those same 3 principles jumping out? Free will, no money, benefit to the community. What we often forget, and this is why we'll come to today, is that while we're doing all this to benefit the community, we often forget that it has enormous benefits for you, the individual. And that's where we want to hit today. All right. Now, descriptions of volunteering vary between countries. Now, if you wanted to pick up a document, and it's available on the WSEC site, Volunteers in Scouting, it's a toolkit, you will find in that toolkit this table. We've given the reference to it at the end of the material. And so what we've got here, and you can't read this very well, but when you get a chance to look at the material, you will see that other NSOs, other countries, have a particular focus on the way they describe volunteering. And some of it is very much and clearly community focus and opportunities for people to do something for other people. So if we look at this one here, in Cambodia, for example, their description is charitable action by a group of people doing charity work without profit. Well, without getting any money, without pay, so voluntary service. And if we wanted to go down to this one in the Philippines, very clearly their description of volunteering is that desire to help someone else, to help another. And they need help at the moment, don't they? We're well aware of that situation. All right, you get a chance to have a look at that at your own time. Now, there have been many approaches to volunteering. Even in your inner circle, they would have come up with ways and means to get people, whether they be related to scouting or whether their parents, as their young people, join. It depends on what it is, whether it's simply asking someone or they have volunteer drives to get people. It depends. But a lot of it is focused on the two approaches, on the needs and aspirations and aligning it to organisations' values. So if we're looking for a leader in scouting, we've got to have someone who is prepared to accept scouting principles. You know, the promise and law and those things that we do are all part of that, of becoming a volunteer. And the second one is others identify specific tasks to find volunteers. We want someone to do X, so we find someone with those skills to do X, whatever that might be. And so that varies in different cultures. Think about your own country, where you come from. How do you get volunteers in your country? Do you send out a note saying, we want volunteers? Do you put something in the newspaper that says, we want volunteers? Or do you simply tap somebody on the shoulder and say, you've got all the right skills and you're good with young people, you work well with other adults, we'd like you to think about leadership in scouting. Here's the story. This is what it's all about. There are different approaches relating to different cultures. Now, question. Before we put up all these points, so people out there and people in here, the question, why do people volunteer? Why did you volunteer?
That's right. None of my friends are watching. All right. So, why do I volunteer? Or why do people volunteer? Why me or others? What do I think? I think it's because they want to help out or participate in something. It's either related to a hobby that they enjoy or something that they believe in. So that's why I think they volunteer. I've been in scouting. Here's a fun story. So I was in scouting until I was a venturer, and I was looking for a venture company in my community, and they did not have one. So they actually said, well, why don't you become an SIT, which is a scouter in training, and help out with our Cub Pack for the time being until we open a venture company. So I said, what a great idea. And I become an SIT, then I became a scouter, and I've never stopped since then. And I also worked with, different community centers and a bunch of other things, and I worked at the YMCA for a very long time and started as a volunteer at the YMCA. So volunteerism has always been sort of part of my life. Yeah. Oh, I get to pick. Oh, that's great. Who do I pick? I know, yeah, that's the problem, though. Is there a volunteer, though? Before I voluntold, is there a volunteer? Because this is all about volunteering. All right, there you go. Good.
I'd like to add what... Oh, nobody's watching. Many people are afraid of that. Even I am. What I say might be. Okay. Apart from... Apart from the need or what we want to help others, by helping others, I get something like a happy feeling, or what do you call? I get the benefit of helping others, and other people appreciate the work I do. Okay. Yeah. They value the service we give. Okay, most of the time anyway.
that's a good question. Actually, I'm just now doing my Guildhall training. And they asked me the same question, and my answer was, I have absolutely no idea. I've just been doing this since I was like 7. So, but then I started thinking. And I still don't really have an answer. I think mostly I'm doing it because it's fun, because I have a lot of friends, and because I think I do a difference. So that is probably the closest thing to an answer I have.
Perfect. Would you give everyone that's contributed, thank you very kindly. All right, now that's interesting, isn't it? Why do I'm a bit like some of you. I've been in scouting since I was 8 years of age, and I'm a lot older now. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. But I've never left. And it was just a natural part of me just to continue on and do what I'm doing. And community service in Australia is considered to be something that you do. If you volunteer, you give community service to something. In my case, it's been to scouting, and many others, it's to the Rural Fire Brigade, or it's to the church youth group, or it's to whatever club or organisation is around in some of our communities. And so it's an opportunity for us to give back to a community what they have given to us over the years. And I still think about it that way. So why do people volunteer? You've given us a couple of perspectives, 3 good perspectives, and thank you for sharing those. Let's see what some of the books say. Why do people volunteer? One is that they say it brings satisfaction from accomplishment. Now, I'm just going to move over here out the way in a minute. Now, does that allow you to see what's on the screen better because of folks sitting over here? Is that better? So, good, okay. All right, the second one is an opportunity to share a skill. You might have something that someone else would be useful, and therefore you're prepared to do that. To gain leadership and other skills is another why people volunteer. They want to be able to demonstrate commitment to a cause or a belief is another one. You think about scouting. If you believe in scouting and you've been part of it as a young person, and you want to continue doing that, well, there's an opportunity. Another one is getting to know a community where people live in your town, city, country. You may know some of them, but people say, well, I'd like to know more about the people that live in my community. And that's one way, is volunteering. Another one is simply, as a lot of older people who volunteer would say, to keep busy. Keep busy and to keep the mind active. Giving something back. I've already mentioned that already. Giving something back to a community or to an organisation who may have given you so much over the years. Scouting for me, and I know Mohammed similarly, is that it's given me enormous opportunities to do lots of things I never would have done without being a scout. And therefore, in the position I've moved up into national appointments and so on, is to give something back. And that's important for many people. It's not gimme, and I take. It's giving back to something worthwhile. And very important one, experience personal growth. How you grow from that experience. There are some others, of course. People donate their professional skill. They can become what we know as an insider. You scout people, you're technically insiders. You're inside the movement. You're getting to know what it's about, to realise its potential and for the development of young people, and you're a very important part of that. The one I mentioned before, simply, because someone simply said to someone, I'd like you to think about this. And they've given them a good story and told them the facts. Because they were asked, they said yes. And to be challenged. You think about your scouting travel so far. You've been challenged along the way, and I'm sure a lot of people find that as part of the incentive. And being an agent of change. We focus on scouting. In our context, we are trying to be agents of change for the development of young people. We want to help them to grow into worthwhile, responsible people of the future. Learn something new. We thought about that one. And here's more. Feel proud. Assure progress. I feel as though I'm doing something and getting somewhere. Doing something different from their job. Those of you that are teachers in the room who have scouts after teaching often find that a challenge. But some people say that's great because it's different. Different sort of thing to what I normally do. And being part of a team, and of course the obvious one. You do it for fun. Don't you? You do it for fun? Yeah, all right, okay. Terrific. All right, so why do people volunteer? To have an impact. Would have been a pressure from a colleague or a friend. Oh, come on, Mohammed. You can do this. You can be a leader in scouting. Oh, if you really want me to. Oh, yeah, I guess so. And so on. Some people do it for recognition or status. Now, that perhaps for us is maybe not a good motive, but for some people it is. And then there's a therapy. Interesting. We'll think about that as we go. And to act out a fantasy. Yeah, some people do. All right. And then this one out of a sense of guilt. Something for me a long time ago. This is just an... And they've been gone, but I thought I let them down at one stage. Here's a chance for me to give them something back and to respect that person. And so there are a whole lot of things here. All right. Mohammed, are you ready? Just yeah. What about yay? Okay, he's on. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Muhammad. I'm helping Paul during this session. Now we're drawing you to come back here to the green spot. We'd like to give you some tasks. You have 2 pieces of papers in your. You have 2 groups now, and we have we need you to briefly discuss what do volunteer want. And we need you take 5 minutes, and we need your feedback in briefly, just a small point. List what do volunteer wants, volunteering for an organization. And we need just 5 minutes to put your input. Now it's okay. I think it's enough time. Thank you for your good job. We need two volunteers, one volunteers from each group, just to explain what. Yeah. Group number one, we need the first volunteer to come up. Hello, please, let's go. That's enough. Thank you. Thumbs up, and I think that group number one is ready. Yes. This is a volunteer work. Yeah. But today you're gonna be volunteer now.
Welcome to karaoke. I always wanted to do that. All right. So, can you all see over here? Everybody on the sidelines? Great. Okay. So, number one, what people want is, I guess, friends, social circles, some sort of social skills. That was something we felt was very important. Personal recognition, to feel, a bit more valued, was very important. Happiness for the service that they were given. So, we could add a smiley face or something like that to that. Feel that you're doing something meaningful, which was very important also. So again, is that experience. Am I talking too fast? You're good? She's typing away. So it's to feel, something meaningful, again, to what you are doing with the youth and everything else. To create a better world. We went really out there. We said, come on, got to aim big. Believe that they are doing the right thing. Oh, that's not right. Hang on. One side gives out, the other side gives out. There you go. So believe that they are doing the right thing. Maybe sometimes they are not, but they are believing that they are doing the right thing and that they're getting involved. To make a change, to go ties in great with to create a better world and to have an impact, something different. Sometimes you were just talking about their daily lives, during the day they are Clark Kent, at night they can be Superman. So it's a great way to sort of, have a different lifestyle and everything else and to change their daily lives. Due to their religious belief, I don't remember talking about that one. Did we say that one? Who said that one? Religious belief? Yes, because they got a calling from God and they wanted to do it. Hallelujah. And for their own personal development, learn new skills. I've had some parents come in sometimes as an example, just thinking about it that, hey, I finally learned how to light a fire. Now I don't have to be dependent on my barbecue. I can do something different. So voila. So that's our sort of top 10 list right there from that group over here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for group number one. Would you please another volunteer from group number two? This is a volunteer. Good job.
Yes. Well, actually, we started out by doing something a bit more, on a higher level, basically, because human contact would go with having fun or making new friends. That was actually what we meant, being part of the group, the same thing. And then we talked about training, but that again is learning something new, gaining a new skill. Then we talked about the opportunities we want to have when we are in volunteering We want people to say thank you when we do something. It's really, really important for us, actually. Then we want a support system. When we have a problem, we want to be able to call someone and have some help. Or, well, that can be just another volunteer, or it can be our own organization. Of course, networking. Again, we want to make friends and we want to know a lot of people. And then we wrote to be myself because, well, in today's society, we probably have a lot of different roles. We have one role at home, and we have another role at work. And sometimes it's just nice to be something else, and perhaps that's a bit closer to what you would like to be if you could choose all the time. And then you want a bit of respect and understanding. Yeah. That was about it.
Thanks for group number 2. Both of group did a good job. Maybe much better than we did. What do volunteer want? As we see here, now we saw what you did. Now we see in the box here. To be, as you may see, both of you, to be a welcome, to be appreciated from your country, from your community, from yourself before. To be prepared for them. When I'm going to do some volunteer work, I have to prepare myself well. I have to to prepare myself well, to be prepared, to be ready for volunteer work. When I do volunteer, we need a good training. Because a volunteer should be a good training to know well what you're doing. If you're going to volunteer without training for something, you need your help, and you don't know anything, maybe you did in a wrong way. No upfront time commitment. Yeah? Yeah? And so also to be commencement with, to start, to be ready at any time as a volunteer. To know they are helping to make the world better, as one of you mentioned. This is some briefing of what I said before, to be welcome, to be prepared, to be good training, to be no upfront time, to commencement with, to know they are helping, to make others, and more and more and more and more. Some of you made 10, some others made 11, and we still have more and more and more. Why do people volunteer? And now we're back again to Mr. Expectation of volunteers. Ability to work as a team. When you'd like to go to do some volunteer work, you don't want to do, you shouldn't do in an individual way. You should do as a teamwork. What the community need, what your school need, what your scout troop need, what your church need, what your watchers. But you should work in a group or in a team. Understanding of commitments. Understanding what you're going to do. Help uphold standards and promotion as a positive public image. And now we come back again to Mr. Wood.
Okay. Look, what you all did very well here, and perhaps that question was a little bit difficult to interpret because it is different to those first few words and phrases we had on those slides. It's looking at particularly those things that a person should really expect to receive if they volunteer. And one of the key ones for us, as you know, is training. If they want to be a scout leader and you expect them to do the job, their expectation is, well, you've got to train me to do the job. That's fair, isn't it? There are many volunteer organisations who are not like scouting. People volunteer and they say, oh, go and help Mrs. Smith over there. Or go and help Mr. Jones over there. And there's really no understanding of what the job is about or what they're really supposed to do. And so they learn through the process of what we call osmosis, or simply by watching what Mr. Smith or Mrs. Jones is doing. Now, in scouting, we take the volunteering component a little bit more seriously, don't we? You think about your commitment as a volunteer. Now, what has been evidenced in Australia, and I said at the beginning I'd use this as an example because the figures were a little easier to get than they were from other countries around the world. And one of the reasons is even the UN, the United Nations, can't give. I went back years trying to find some consolidated figures on volunteering. Even they can't be that prescriptive or that definitive on certain volunteering aspects. And so what we're looking at on this particular slide, and this is only one example, the volunteering trends that are occurring worldwide is that there has been a significant increase in people willing to volunteer. And it's not just for scouting, it's for a wide variety of things. Now, in Australia, you can see the figures. In 2010, this is the latest statistic, we're due for another census statistics intake in 2014. And so they do them every 3 to 4 years. So this is the latest. So at that time, 6.1 million people, that's 36% of the population then, aged 18 and over, participated in voluntary work, with women at 38% of that and men 34%. Now, there's a higher percentage of women than there are men. Now, I noticed in a couple of other countries around the world, that's fairly consistent. Women seem to volunteer more than men do. We could ask ourselves a question, but there are probably some very good reasons, not the least of which is there's still a high percentage of women worldwide that aren't in full-time employment. So therefore they do something else to occupy the day. Now interestingly, that figure that it's indicated there, the overall figure was slightly up from 34% in 2006, but it was not significantly different. The current trend or the indicator is the percentage of people taking volunteering as some form of activity in a community is likely to be much higher when they take the census figure for next year. Now that in itself is interesting. Here's another part. Here's a graph which shows this to you by trend. This is looking at it by gender and gender by age. If you have a look here, here's the percentage, but here are the age groups, 18 to 24 and right through to 85 plus. See, in Australia, like many countries now, there's a retirement age, but they can't stop you working. So if you want to work till 85, do that. You may not be in a real good state to do it, but there's no compulsion that you must retire at a certain age. They've removed all those barriers because of discrimination and those things. The point to make is that you can see there obviously the trend is much higher in these particular age brackets, 35 to 55, as you can see here. Now, if you think about the average age of leaders in scouting in your NSO, many of you have younger age brackets. Traditionally, though, most are in that 35 to 55-year age bracket. This trend for volunteering in Australia is just an example to illustrate that point. Have a look at this one. These are the types of organisations that volunteers volunteered for. And it's shown by gender again, male, female. And you can see there that the little icons are mentioned. So the dark filled in ones are males and the open ones are female. And you can see that the various categories from arts and heritage type things to religious groups, to communities, to education and training, say to working with youth organisations, it's the women that shine the men as categories. But when it gets to some, of course, it's the males that seem to have a greater dominance. Whatever that means is that, again, younger age groups are starting to shine in respect of volunteering. Let's have a look at the next one. Here are some questions that you might think about. And these, we're not going to work at these because we've got something else we'll give you shortly. But these are things that you might think about from your NSO or your NSA. What are the trends in your country? Is there an increase or decrease in the numbers of people volunteering? Do you know that? What is the trend in your NSO? Is it volunteering going up? Was it going down? Is it more males volunteering than female? Whatever. Is there a certain percentage will work in younger section age groups in scouting and not that many working in older section age groups in scouting? So there are a whole range of things that you could think about. Is there a greater number of female volunteers compared to male volunteers? Is there any evidence to suggest that people volunteering are coming from younger age groups than ever before? Because the evidence we got in scouting is that there is a trend, that there appears to be a younger set of volunteers now coming from younger age groups than we've ever had. Now, there's probably a good reason for that. Let's highlight that. Now, you have heard about the baby boomers, Generation X's, Generation Y, and Gen Z. You heard about them? Now, if you're born between certain years, you're generally one of those. I'm a baby boomer. Yeah, I know it's hard to believe. Yeah, I know. Yeah, hard to believe, I know. But I'm a baby boomer, all right? A lot of you are Gen X's, and some of you are Gen... Now, you, by the various characteristics of your generation, have had influence on volunteering. Let me highlight that. Simply, Gen X's are those born between those years, and they're generally aged around that vicinity. They're called the 30-somethings, all right, the 30-somethings. Gen Y's are those born between those years, and they're generally aged somewhere here. They're also known as the Nexters, or as we've seen already in a session I sat in not too long ago, they're called the Millennials. That's an interesting turn of phrase. Now, what is it about volunteering for Gen X's? Have a look at these interesting points. Gen X's may not connect with their grandparents' concept of volunteerism as a civic duty. In other words, it's not for them. They don't seem to make that link. Or if it is, it's something they've done because someone suggested it was a good idea. They may not have thought that, but have gone ahead and done it anyway. They may not buy into their parents' optimism about changing the world. They feel capable of helping one person, prefer to focus on local, not global issues, on tangible results, idealism. Now, if we think about the characteristics of what we know as Gen X's, that has had some impact on the numbers of volunteers over the time period that we've had in scouting. Now, this is the one we want to focus. Gen Y's. They look for variety, stimulation, and push-button action. You know, I think the worst thing that ever happened to communities, society, is the day we got instant coffee. Because everything today's got to be instant. We've got instant coffee. Got to have instant on the tablet. Got to have instant SMS. Twitter, instant. Facebook, get it. Got to be quick, got to be there. Agree? Yeah. So I blame instant coffee, all right? It started the trend. Now, this situation, though, can work to volunteering's great advantage. Because the key thing with all of this is that Gen Y's are generally searching for causes. Now, if the picture is painted well enough, scouting is one of those causes. Sir. Please. Happy for you to do that.
Great. Actually, there's a big scientific study in Sweden now that sees that young people today are more engaged than any other young generation ever before in history. But it also shows that a great number of young people are disorientated, the study says. So they want to be involved and they want to take part in volunteering, but they don't know how to do it and they don't know where. They just need someone to lend them a hand and say, this is the arena, come and volunteer with us. Yeah.
Thank you. That's good. That's good news, isn't it? That's good news. Thank you for that contribution. That's perfect. Love to continue the dialogue on that, because that's an important point. You validated this notion of younger people wanting to do. That seems to be the trend internationally. So thank you for that, because as you rightly pointed out, they exhibit a strong interest in volunteering. And those other things you say, there's got to be something. They see disoriented, it's this finding or searching for the cause, is what you're saying. So it's all, for us, an exciting opportunity. Okay, so are you excited about young people wanting to volunteer now more than they ever were? I think it's great. I mean, I grew up in an era where no one wanted to do anything. You had to be flogged. Go and do this. Yes, I'll do it. People today, younger people, seem to have a more willingness to be able to say, yes, I'll have a go at that, or I'm prepared to do that. Okay, let's move on. Okay, do you want to tell us a bit more about motivation? Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Motivated volunteers list not only is knowing how to beat up a given motivated, but in being able to figure out what are the volunteers' needs. This is shown in 1998. And also we have another challenge. Therefore, for a volunteers organization is finding fit between the volunteers' devices, talents, skills, energy, work habits, and attitude, and the volunteers organization needs. Sorry, I want to know. No. Now, why people stop volunteers? This is a very important point. Why people stop volunteers? We are scouts, we can understand this well. Maybe lack of purpose, no purpose led him to do volunteers. No support, nobody support them to do their duties, or that the volunteers is important to do it. No guidance, no resources. Or too many jobs. When he get involved in volunteers, maybe he get bad guidance to give him many jobs. Feels that volunteers, it's not as he expect. And feeling of inadequacy, efficiency, and incompetence. He don't feel incompetence with others, so he don't feel he don't see that's a good example to do volunteers with others. If like some in Egypt, they don't have any competence. When he give them to volunteers alone, they come back without doing anything. But when we put them in competence with other group, with other and they see what they did and see what's the result, as we did here in many projects, we get an excellent results from them, because they already have a competence with others to do volunteers. Lack of recognition, also lack of focus. Nobody focus them where is he can do volunteers, what we do volunteers, why we need to volunteers, which kind of volunteers you should do. Lack of information and the communication with the community, with any organization need volunteers, or he have a lack of information about volunteers. Maybe this point is not appear in Europe, but in the Middle East, it's you can recognize it easily. Also, lack of policies and procedures. He don't have the policy of volunteers. Don't have procedures. When he start volunteers, what procedure you should do. Also, change in priorities. Maybe when he's a student, when he's in university, have a lot of time, a lot of energy to do. Maybe he start working, he don't have enough time, he don't have enough money, he don't have he maybe change moving from the place which he can do volunteers work before. Also, poor responsibility or job fit. He's don't have responsibility about the community, about the life, about to do volunteers. Also, mismatch of expectation and politicals. Sometimes some politicals don't push you to, as example, in Egypt or in Arab Springs, a lot of person was doing volunteer work. Now they stop due to another interesting. But a lot of persons, a lot of youth people now starting to do volunteers. It wasn't to do anything before. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this. Volunteer in scouting. Because we are scouting, no scouting without volunteers involvement. We are scouting. Normally, we are volunteers. Because we are as a volunteers, before we enter scouting, it's a volunteer. Time, money, and your experience, everything. In the first time as you are scouts, and also when you as a leaders. Volunteer for scouting. Scouting is a great opportunity to volunteers. To do something with and for young people. Normally, during the week, during the summertime, during the week training, during the school training, the church training, the school troops, every week or every month, you get a duty to do some volunteers work. Maybe as example in Egypt, we give them duty to do volunteer work, and we need you to come back. With the feedback personnel and also the organization which we send our scouts there to find out if they did a volunteer in a good way or not. To develop their own skills at the same time. Before you start the volunteers in any field, you have to get some information, some training. This training gives you more skills and more challenge of organization, a unit of young people. Also, when you do challenge with yourself, with your organization, when you go volunteers, you need to back with more and more and more and more. As example, in Egypt, and we have a very small scout group. They went out. They found a put of fire in their house nearest of them. This house for child refugees or not orphan. What happened with this scout group? They challenged themselves. Some of them helped in the first time, and the other went to their houses to find out place. Each one take one of these orphans to stay with them for at least 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, until they find other. They challenge themselves to do something for this. Planning and running activities. This the example. It's happened by time, but when you do planning, good planning for next time, our scout group would like to plan. We're gonna to volunteer in somewhere. We plan well, good skills, good training, good something to do the volunteers work, which you're gonna start to do this. Participation in the life of the local community. Normally, when you are a scout group in the community, you find out what's your neighbor need, what's your community need, what's your church need, what's the area which we live need from volunteer. This is the best kind of volunteer because you live in this area, you know what's this area need, you know what's your neighbors need, what's the community need here, and you're thinking well, and you train yourself well to do volunteer in this area. Thinking question. Is this your one?
All right. We've looked at this afternoon briefly some of the benefits. We've looked at some of the reasons why. You've told us or three of you have, why you volunteer and why you did it in the first place. And we've also explored some of the statistics which show us that volunteering appears to be on the increase, particularly in the Generation Y area. And we've had evidence today from Sweden that backs up that thinking that young people are there and they're wanting to volunteer, but often they're not quite sure which way they've got to go to do that. Now, Scouting is on a golden opportunity here. This couldn't be more opportune for us, particularly as we focused on these last 3 days of this Congress, to look at ways of developing our education and our thinking as an informal education authority, but importantly, thinking about our focus in what we're doing back in our NSOs and NSAs. And volunteering is one of those key aspects which we often neglect. Now, what I'd like us just think about shortly is what are we as a movement doing to capture the momentum, particularly with Gen Ys? What are you doing in your NSO? Did you know that Gen Ys were there and could be utilised? How much attention do we give to recruiting young people who haven't gone through our program but still feel that they can contribute by volunteering as leaders? In other words, they've had no connection with Scouting, and yet they're there. They might be a friend of a friend of a friend who could be. All right. For Scouting to be successful, it needs a wide group of volunteers with a wide variety of skills. Yes? We agree? That's fair. I think that's fairly obvious. So volunteers who work as a team, volunteers who provide particular expertise, and who support leaders, and who train other adults, and those who have special skill can be part of Scouting. All right, and that can go on and on and on, right? Okay, now here's what we'd like you to do. Now you've got an opportunity here to think outside the box. You know that little box we often confine with our ideas and our thinking? Try and think outside the box with this. What we'd like you to do is in groups, like you to discuss. We're going to put a couple of questions up, and these are the questions. What do we have that others do not have such that we can attract more volunteers? Scouting is unique. What makes us unique? What is it we can do to attract more volunteers because of our uniqueness? From a marketing perspective, what is the unique selling point of Scouting? That's the question. What is the unique selling point? What is it that we offer that no one else can that could be just that hook for younger volunteers or even volunteers to join Scouting? Now, the second question is this one. What can we offer to existing and potential volunteers so that they can fully benefit from their volunteering experiences in Scouting and thus place us in a better strategic position to attract, recruit and retain more volunteers? Okay? Now, Group 1 and Group 2. Which one? Group 1. Do you want to do group question 1? Wonderful. Group 2, question 2. You happy with that? Well, you had your chance. Quick. Actually, there is a number 3. There's a question 4. And there's even... I took out question 5. There was another question. All right, come back to those 2 first questions because they're key to what we need to think about. You have got, you're in your own mind, you're leaders in Scouting. You're here at this Congress because you have an interest in being here. Here's your chance to think, what is it that we can do to be able to get people more committed to volunteering to Scouting? So, Group 1, question, yes? You understand the question? I see nods, that's always a good start. And when I get this like this, I go, oh, okay. Group 2, you understand your question. Okay? Right, we're going to give you, how much time do you think you might need? Don't say half an hour because we don't have it. 10 minutes? Okay. if we give you, let's say about 10 minutes, just come up with some ideas. Don't sort of dwell on anything. Just think of some things that might be doable, all right? Okay, we'll give you 10. Let's see where you go. Thank you. And those out there in Cyberland, if you're still with us, you might want to consider these as well. Okay, righto, teams, back on task. Come on, back on task. All right, 10 minutes. We're on now. Go. Okay, we're ready to go. You've had a little bit of an opportunity to... 1 minute. Well, let's see what you can get down. We'll have Group 2. Have you got some points that you want to share? All right, we'll hear Group 2, shall we? While Group 1 quietly, one ear listening, and someone else just completing that. Let's see what you've got. Do you have a chart you can share? Yeah. It's money for our friends out there who can't be with us, so they can see. Anything there? Well, tell us, you did question 1, correct? You did question 2, I beg your pardon. They're busily fevering. I can hear the pen scratching across the pad. All right. This question related to what can we offer to existing or potential volunteers so they can fully benefit. Let's move this to the spot where everyone can see it. There we go, right near the green spot. Just move it over there a tad. Okie doke. Now you want to pop that up there? Terrific. Okay, now from that, what can you say?
Well, we didn't write that much. We were talking about what we are doing and what we could do to, to actually tell our volunteers what it is they're getting from their volunteering. So actually we were talking about the Belgium Scouts. They have a tool. So it's called Scout Leader Skills. So the young people get around 100 questions. They answer them and send them in. And then they get a report back in about 20 pages. 10 of the pages are telling them what are their strong sides. And what can they do to actually improve themselves in the areas where they are not as strong. So that's a tool, so they can actually work with this in the scouting facilities when they are young. I think from the scouting age. Okay, so from the 22. And that means that they are actually capable of writing a resume where they can point out what they're actually doing and learning being scouts. So they won't just have to write scout leader, but they can actually tell in more words what it is they are learning and doing, so they don't have to say, I can light a fire, because, well, yeah, but perhaps not important if you want to be a business leader. And then we were talking about actually trying to tell the good story. That's especially perhaps interesting if we want to recruit more members. So hopefully the 22 years old who have made this report knows what they're getting from scouting, and then will tell their friends to come and see. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah.
Sell the message, but using tools that can help us and help them as well. Okay? All right, that's great. Thank you. Shall we? Wonderful. Can you hear all that noise out there? Yeah, can you hear it all? All right. Group 1. Now, what have you got for us, please? Yes, you can. The question: what do you have that? What do we have that others do not have, such that we can attract more volunteers? And from the marketing perspective, what is the unique selling point of scouting? Okay, now I understand, just listening, they're going to tell you these are words of wisdom.
We have all. That's what we have. That's how amazing we are.
Here we go.
All right, there we go. We are unique. That's what we are. And it's true. Everywhere you go, people talk about scouting. And the moment you mention scouts, they picture neckerchiefs, they picture the uniform, they picture things. So what are we unique about? That's what we sort of had a long discussion about. So we talked about, well, we offer the scouting method. It's something that has existed for almost 100 years, and we use it. And it's something that the old man himself, BP, created, and we keep using that. So that brings out the rich history of what our movement is about also. We offer great experiences. We can talk about the jamborees, the fire lightings, the gatherings that you can have, coming to international world education conferences and congresses. Huh? Come on. Exactly. We offer values, right? We're talking about not only their own personal values, but we're talking also about spiritual values. We're talking about all sorts of... So it's what's important to them, we consider that important in their own personal development, and we offer that and support it. The rich history I mentioned. We offer skills and development. Again, I go back to building fires. We talk about, taking confidence in doing your ability of being prepared and being out there in the real world. We also, meaningful time with your child and 20 of their new friends. That in itself is also a very important part of the experience. She's taking a picture, come on. So there you go. That's it. It's, that unique sort of touch that we can have. So, voila.
Right, that's terrific. Thank you. Now, I'm not sure whether anyone out there in Cyberland has had a chance to... Oh, look at this. Wowee. Folks out there, Group 1 were just sort of being Group 1. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's just think about it as we start to pull this together. If we were able to spend some time on question 3, how do we motivate and develop younger age volunteers so they start and stay with us? Do you think that your points and your points together would be useful in being able to do that? So they think they're great, you think you're fantastic. Right, okay. Either or. The issue is that we often just forget that we often have to go ahead and do extra things to make sure we get the people we want. We can't expect them to come to us. We've got to do some extra work so they come to us. So if we want to motivate and think about developing younger age volunteers, we've got to find out firstly what it is we specifically want. We've got tools we can use that have been used. I know other NSOs have got similar tools. Selling our message. We don't often sell the message strong enough. What it is that you get out of scouting? What's the personal stuff for you? Young people still appeal to that. What's in it for them? It's a natural human tendency. What do I get out of it? And that's the bit we don't often sell. Come and be a scout leader, we say. You can take kids camping. So, what does it mean for you personally? And that's the bit. It's like, as they say, it's like selling, you can sell the sausage, but the sausage is no good without the sizzle. So you've got to think about it from that point. All right, what motivation and reward, whether it be outside or inside, or those strategies can we use to retain volunteers? You came up with a few this afternoon. That list that you put there has got some things that could be useful. Thing to think about is, when you go back to your NSOs, don't just say, I went to a session about the benefits of volunteering and being challenged to think about attracting other younger volunteers. What is it you're going to do about it? It's something that doesn't stop because you had a little session here in an hour and a half, which only touched the tip of the iceberg. Go back and explore it further because it is worthy of doing so. All right, so we've had that. So what can scouting do more? You think about this from where you come from. The scout movement can achieve impact in the area of volunteering in these areas. Telling the story. In other words, advocacy. Saying what we're doing and why we're doing it, but selling it in a way that it becomes attractive to people. And saying we go camping and we get to work with 35 children who are the nightmare because their behaviour is terrible isn't going to get us volunteers. We sell the story all right, but we've got to sell it in a way that it becomes attractive. We share our achievements, our experiences and our expertise. We often are afraid to do that. But people are often challenged to say, well, I'd like to do that too. I can have those experiences. Working with our partners to promote the value of volunteering. Do you have other people you work with? Many people in scouting have got commercial links who support them financially or in kind. Often those facts can help in that process. support a culture of volunteering. In your NSO, do you have a culture that says, if we don't support our volunteers, we're not going to keep them? Adults in Scout say to people, you're doing a great job. How can we help you more? What is it you'd like as a approach and people feel appreciated rather than letting them go and something else? And the last one, we can't not forget about quality scouting, because quality scouting is going to give us better scouting, and quality volunteers are going to give us better volunteers to do the job that they need to do. All right, so what can scouting do? We need to improve the quality of our educational offering to young people. If the program isn't good, no matter how good the volunteer is, you're not going to keep the kids. We can offer better service. We can retain more volunteers with more scouting by better managing them. And we don't just throw them to the job and let them sit, support them all the way. And this other one, really tied into adults in management of our human capital, as we would say. How we manage them, how we support them, how we help them do the job, and importantly, recognise the efforts that they do. Challenge them, reward them, and give them opportunities and us as a movement to explore new models for volunteering. And I guess from the session today, you're challenged to go back and to say to your NSO, what new ways can we look at volunteers? How can we get people scouting, the younger generation who are so keen? How do we get the message across to them? All right, so what can you do? Well, there are lots of things you can do. That list of references will be up on the website. You can have a look at some of those, but there are a couple of useful ones that are there. The volunteers in scouting toolkits, even though they might appear to be a bit old, they still contain enormous amounts of great information, tools to be able to help you in that area. Some people didn't even know that we've got these toolkits. They've been out for a little while, they're available, and you can actually have a look at them online. All right, so we want to say thank you, but before we sort of and get you to do evaluations, what do we have in the form of questions? Yes, please. Yeah, okay, please.
Sorry, it's just a question for all of you. Okay. So in Belgium, we say when you are a volunteer, you give your time, your talent, and your heart. Maybe a good question, and your money. Did you have to give your money to be a volunteer? When you travel around the country to go on a training and things like that, did you have to give your money? It's a question that I think the NSO have to ask themselves. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Very good. Any other questions or comments before we get you with the evaluation forms? Yes, I'll hand these out.
Just out. I would like to give you one small example in volunteering scouting. In Saudi Arabia, this year, do you know the Muslim people, it's, every year, have a gathering called Hajj. Hajj in once a year. They're gathering about more than 5 million Muslim in one place in one time. This time, I'm a Muslim, but this is the first time I did the Hajj this year. I've been there. A lot more than hundreds of thousands of lost people. Very old people, don't know the way, lost the group which was coming with. If you would like to ask anybody around there, policeman, ambulance, anybody can help you, an official one, I would like to go to this area, sorry, I don't know. I'm not from here. If you ask anyone, the only information you can need it, please go to the scouts. Go to the scouts. And everywhere you can find more than 20,000 scouts with the uniform and with a lot of maps. Just you'd like to say, in place number so and so in this area, the scouts can take you. Maybe you're gonna lose 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers. Somebody cannot walk. Some ladies cannot, cannot breathe, need something like this. The scouts carry him and do it. 20,000 scouts with maps from the printed this year with a messenger of peace. I'm choked because nobody know anything except for the scouts. This is a good example for the volunteer work. And these scouts, I ask them, you are from this city, from Mecca, from Medina? They say, no, we are coming from all over the Saudi Arabia to help. This is a great example in scouting.
A little bit of a look in to a bit further understanding of what volunteering can mean, but importantly, thinking about what can we do to better our volunteer chances. And I'd be really interested in keeping in touch with any of you, particularly I'm interested about the Swedish project. I think that's got a lot of potential for scouting all over, to think about how you're working with that, because others might be able to adopt similar practices with great effect. So be interested in hearing more about that. Thank you, everyone. We got an opportunity in just a moment to get to the final part of the Congress, but it's been great to work with you today. Thank you for your attendance and your involvement. Thank you to the rapporteur, to our two OCLs today. And did we get any other comments before, online? No. See, they were so wrapped with what was happening, they didn't want to know. Oh, that's probably not right. All right, but thank you for what you've done today, the three of you, and we look forward to the rest of the day. Thank you.